And joining me is the director of our sister program, the clinical PhD program, Dr. Lynn Barrera. I'll let you.
Hi. Thank you. I'm Lynn Barrera, and I'm relatively new to the role as director of the PhD program, but I've been a faculty member at PAU for many, many years and have served in the role as associate director of clinical training in the past. So I'm really happy to be here and share information about our sister program, the other sister, the PhD program.
Awesome. And we decided to do a joint info session today because we get so many questions about what's the overlap, how are they different, how are they unique, should I apply to both or not, what's the difference between a clinical PhD and PsyD track for these specific programs. And so the way we've structured our presentation today is we're going to talk about the ways that the resources and ways that we overlap, and then we'll go on and I'll describe some of the unique aspects of the PsyD program specifically and the things that only happen in the PsyD program. And then similarly, Ellen will talk about the unique aspects of the PhD program, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end um, to answer your questions. So, starting us out, we get a ton of questions about, you know, just career trajectory. Should I go PsyD? Should I go PhD? What does that mean specifically within the two PAU programs? And so, what's interesting is that the programs are actually more similar than different. So in the realm of clinical emphasis, so for a PsyD program, we're about as researchy and science-based as you can get. So we're close to the center here as a very research-focused, clinically applied program. And the reverse is true for the clinical PhD program, where it's as clinically applied as you can get for a clinical PhD program. So we really meet in the middle. And so there are certain ways that we overlap in terms of our curriculum and our faculty. So our students in both of our programs, they take separate courses, but some of them are extremely similar because APA, American Psychological Association, dictates the core curriculum for all of the programs that they accredit. And so as you are fine-tuning your final list of doc programs, you'll find that, wow, okay, a lot of these classes are the same across programs, and that's true for the two clinical psychology programs here. Each program, we have a max of 30 students per course, and they're fewer in the elective courses. Even though most of the classes are separate, there are 6 classes that are cross-listed where you might be in a class together. If you're in the PsyD program, you might be, find you have some PhD brethren in your class, and these classes are listed here. And oops, sorry. And then we have some PAU faculty that teach in both programs, and here's some examples. Dr. Balsam, Dr. Kuo, who's a big DBT specialist. Dr. Pretz is our big psychodynamic specialist. Dr. Schulte in cognitive science, and Dr. Chamala is a fantastic social psychologist. We also work hand in hand there's over 200 plus practica available in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's not special to our program. That's just luck of being in an area that's rich with a lot of mental health facilities. But neither program has a list that's that expansive because we have a lot of really tight criteria. It needs to be a psychologist supervising, it has to be, evidence-based approaches. There's a lot of criteria. And so, even though we have distinct lists and there is plenty that aren't approved by one or the other, there are many practica that we share in terms of what we approve our students to go to, including the three clinics that are the community-based low-fee psychology training clinics at PAU, the Sexual and Gender Identity Clinic, La Clínica Latina, and then just a general community clinic. And then the VA systems, the Palo Alto VA, those positions are actually captive only to the PAU programs in the Bay Area. And then these are just some examples. There's more, but these are the primary heavy hitter examples of the practica that actually overlap between the two programs. So in both programs, you earn a Master of Science in Clinical Psychology along the way. And also in both programs, unlike a traditional clinical PhD program where you're basically writing a love letter right now to a potential advisor saying, I'd love to do exactly what you're doing for the rest of my life. And then you're matched and you find yourself in their lab day one. And, if that works out, that's phenomenal. And sometimes it's not the best match. And so that's a little bit tricky to navigate, especially in a small psychology department. So we both have unique models where you're not showing your research mentor until after you're here for a while and you get to know the faculty, you get to know the research interests, and then you find your way. You can start research day one if you'd like to, of course, but in terms of your official mentor, you don't have to choose that until you've got your feet on the ground and you're getting to know us. And interestingly, the career outcomes, and I think this mirrors what's out there in the field too, is clinical PsyD, clinical PhD in both programs. So 90% in the PsyD consortium and 87% in the PAU, the clinical PhD program. The alumni report psychotherapy or assessment as a primary job responsibility. So there can be I've noticed it in the last decade more so as I'm interviewing candidates and talking about people's past and their decisions on, I'd love to hear about your trajectory, your decision making on going for a PsyD over a PhD, and really commonly hearing people, oh, well, I know I want to do clinical work, so I just went PsyD. And as a clinical PhD who does a lot of clinical work, there are a lot of other routes besides the clinical PsyD. And so, and I think this, these career outcomes bore that out. And so just really like to keep people, it makes me nervous in our field that people are getting this kind of bifurcated view, like, oh, you want clinical, go PsyD. And not realizing that there's a whole cool career trajectory within clinical PhD, which can be heavily clinically applied. So that's how we overlap. And so now I'm going to shift into the PsyD Consortium. So we were founded in 2002, and it was just a wonderfully fantastic creative startup of a small private psychology focused university and a large, very large medical school, and really being able to capitalize on the strengths of both institutions and departments. And there was no model for it, so we really just got to go wild and design some of the aspects that really could help make sure that our students who are going to be out there providing care, that their training is in a very active, clinically applied setting in the medical school, taking classes, um, by folks who we have a requirement that if you're teaching a clinically applied course in the PsyD program, you must be clinically active with that population or that approach. Um, uh, so from there, we were obviously accredited right away as soon as we were able to apply. And then just last fall, we decided to finally shed the PGSP confusing name in front of the consortium. So when we started the program, Palo Alto University was called Pacific Graduate School of Psychology, but we were very young in our reputation as the consortium at that time. So we decided to keep PGSP, Stanford PsyD Consortium, just for as we were trying to grow our reputation. And now 16 years later, we've decided we're pretty well settled in our reputation, and it will just simplify things for our students and for our field if we don't have 3 school names attached, because it was quite a mouthful to say PGSP, Stanford PsyD Consortium at Palo Alto University, way too much. So now we are officially PAU-Stanford PsyD Consortium, and it's just so much simpler. And it much better reflects the 2 partner institutions. So how do our students identify themselves? I think honestly, I think the first quarter, it's a little tricky. Am I PAU? Am I Stanford? Am I in between? And I think the reality is that people just really zero in on the consortial part of their identity, and oh yeah, I'm a PsyD consortium student. So officially, consortium students are full-time registered Palo Alto University students who attend a 50% Stanford affiliated PsyD program. So by contract, which is tightly observed, each partner institution jointly contributes to almost every aspect of the program. So some examples, um, down to the unit every year, I need to make sure that 50% of the units are being taught by Stanford faculty and 50% are taught by PAU faculty. Dissertation committees. So when we have a 2-person minimum committee. And so you choose your dissertation chair based on your interest area, not by institution. And, but because we want 50% representation, when you choose at least one of your other members, they need to be from the other partner institution. Approximately 80% of our students are electing to choose a Stanford faculty for their dissertation committee chair. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the cachet of Stanford. I think it really reflects the PsyD-ness of the students, in the sense that the research that's happening in the clinical psychiatry department at Stanford, it's more the clinical trials, very applied with patients. And although there is some clinical research going on at PAU, it's not quite as predominant as it is in the clinical psychiatry department. And so it just really reflects, I think, the clinically applied focus of the PsyD students. This slide is basically, if you do this one page, then you'll get your Master of Science and your PsyD. It's quite simple. But this is not going to be that different than what you'll see again in a lot of programs, in the sense of some of these basic sequences of, affective bases of behavior, cognitive bases of behavior, social aspects of behavior. Those are all required at these various programs. I think the things that make our curriculum unique are really the aspects that I mentioned before, that if you're teaching clinically applied class like nature and treatment of anxiety disorders, you need to be an active clinician treating anxiety disorders. And a lot of the folks who are also doing that are also involved in research around that area as well. Like our DBT course, there's a lot of the folks who teach that course, oftentimes like Dr. Janice Kuo, is actively involved in research and seeing patients with DBT. A couple unique things about our course sequence is dissertation prep in year 3. So this is when your cohort of 30 gets broken down into 4 groups. So maybe like 7 people, 7, 8 with a faculty mentor, and you're meeting regularly as a small group, as essentially group therapy for your dissertation. It's just helping you form your idea, make sure you have traction, support, and so that by the end of the fall quarter, you have your idea and your committee. And then as you're continuing into the winter quarter with that course, you're making progress, you're writing your method section. And I think this really is a really important component of why our students are so successful at completing in 5 years. So about 75% of our students are actually completing their dissertation defense before leaving for internship, which is unique or atypical, and it's extremely helpful because as you're on your internship year, um, that's a full-time clinical gig and you're treating patients all day, and it's really hard to come home at night and work and break out your stats and start writing your dissertation and spend your weekends doing that. So we really like to help our students get done before they leave for internship. There's also a very intensive internship prep sequence that actually both programs offer. They look a little bit different, but both programs offer a very intensive internship prep sequence with seminars, guest speakers, internship advisors who help line edit. Basically the same process you're going through now, but a little bit on steroids because the internship uh, match and balance. So, but line editing your CV, your cover letters, your essays, mock interview practice, site selection guidance, that type of thing. Um, I showed you the slide on some of the overlapping opportunities. The sequence within the PsyD program is that you can start a supplemental practicum, meaning not required, optional, as early as week 1 in the program if you'd like to. Um, and these are meant to be small, light lift ways to dip your toes in potential area of specialty and check it out without having to commit a full year of a 15 to 24-hour a week practicum to an entire area. So, it's really it was very common conversation I'd have with my advisees of, well, I might be interested in substance use, but gosh, what if I hate it? And then I've committed this whole 24 hours a week for a full year of this very specialized training. And so we have a zillion supplemental practicum opportunities at Stanford in our department. And these are between 2 and 8 hours a week. And so you can start them as early as year 1. You can only do 2 at a time. We had to set a cap, which I think again reflects the PsyD-ness of our students of just wanting to take advantage of all the clinical opportunities possible. But I'd say our average students does 3 to 4 supplemental practica in the tenure that they're in the program. Then you do 3 full years, foundational, intermediate, and advanced, of primary practicum, which is that 15 to 24 hours primary practicum. And we have several captive sites, meaning just to our program. And then we have about 40 plus external sites in the community. We do great on internship match. And I think that really, we do require, both programs do require APA accredited internships, and that's because we love our students. You don't want, wherever you end up going, do not do an non-accredited internship. It's like falling short at the finish line because there are several states you can't get licensed if you don't do an APA accredited internship. There's plenty of facilities like Stanford that you can't work if you didn't do an APA accredited internship. So that's why we require it. But I think our match rates, people ask us, well, what's the special sauce? And I think both programs are really lucky to, get a self-selected group of great students and clinicians as a start. So we get great material to start with. Uh, and um, and then of course the program reputations are great. So we certainly have internships that um, we tend to match with almost every year. And that's just the best feedback for us as program directors of, okay, yeah, we like what you're training. Your students are coming prepared and ready to hit the ground running. Um, so, um, so the PsyD program, our average students, they're getting out in 5 years. We have a very low attrition rate, 11 students out of 304 in the past 10 years. Um, and we do graduate and we celebrate big. Um, Very happy day. Graduation is definitely the happiest day of the year. And then after graduation, licensing exam. This is not something you need to worry about yet. I would say it's the easiest hurdle of all of the pieces of towards a degree. This is the agency that that orchestrates the licensing exam, the EPPP. They publish this data every year. And so of all the people graduating between January 2020 and the end of last year, so that's 17,748 accredited doctoral programs in psychology, 75% passed it. And so in that same time frame, we had 150 alums from the PsyD Consortium take the exam, and 98.7% passed the exam. So 23% better than national average. These aren't pass rates, these are actually score rates. So this is what all of those required classes that we talked about earlier, affective bases, statistics, history, you get tested on those for your licensure exam. And so nationally, these are the average scores, and this is our program scores. And so we're happily landing above the national averages, even in research methods and statistics, which I think is interesting as a PsyD program. In terms of PsyD admissions, so in terms of recommended preparation, we got 3 weeks to go for our December 1 deadline. We don't have course prerequisites specifically. We have some recommendations. You do need to have some psych courses, but we don't like to, we think you can get a broad, I think that understanding of psychology doesn't have to come from 5 specific courses. So we just have a recommended, but we're really quite open to looking at, there's a lot of things like cognitive science that cross over into psychology and things like that. We really do lean into clinical experience. And this is not because we need you to come in and hit the ground running and being able to see patients from day one. This is really stemming from our care of our students and of recognizing the degree of investment of this decision. And it's really easy to have fantasies of what a clinical psychology career is like from movies or books and things like this, but it's really quite something different to sit across the table from someone who's suicidal and, you know, have that moment where you don't know what the right thing to say is in that moment, and you get through that time, and at the end, even though you're wiped out, somehow you're also energized and still know that you want to do this. That's what we want. We want you to have some level of experience of knowing what you're getting into before you invest so much time, energy, money, love, sweat, tears. So if you don't have any clinical experience, I would suggest, and you're hoping to apply this year, I would honestly suggest waiting it out another year and getting some clinical experience, because you're probably not going to be in our finalist group. And again, it's not because we need you to hit the ground running. It's just we need you to know what you're getting into. And then all the classic things of the requirements, the CV, statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, transcripts. We do not look at GREs. And in terms of the dual applicants, what I would advise to my own students already is, and this applies to practica, this applies to internship, this applies to postdoc, cast a broad net, apply to, it doesn't cost anything to check this box that you'd like to be considered for both programs. See what comes back, see if you get interviews for both programs. I learned so much about myself through interview processes, about what actually felt authentic in my answers and when I was meeting with different people. And so definitely click that box if you're curious about both programs. If you're leaning towards a PhD and you want to check us out as a PsyD program or vice versa, definitely do that. So our timeline, so yeah, our deadline is coming up in about 3 weeks. And so we're gonna start interviewing hopefully in December and wrap up in February. We'll have a couple, and they're all virtual. And that's just to save you all money and time, and for equity reasons. And then, but if we're in the position to be able to offer you admission, we do have 2 open houses where you can come check us out in person. And then we just follow the classic timeline of the deadline of April 15th. And then I will turn it over to Ellen.
Great, thank you. As I'm pulling up my screen, I tried to answer some of the questions in the chat, but wasn't able to get to all of them. But I'm hopeful that we'll have an opportunity to answer questions. So thank you for that, especially sharing the similarities between our programs. As you can see, there's quite a bit of overlap in the 2 programs. And so I'll try to highlight aspects of the PhD program which differ a bit from the PsyD. So the PhD program at PAU has been around for a bit longer than the PsyD program. It was one of the foundational programs when the university, back when it was PGSP, was founded. It's been APA accredited since 1988. Similar to the PsyD, it is a 5-year full-time program, although many of our students end up finishing in about 6 years. And then in terms of the training model for the PhD program, we use the practitioner scientist model to guide our curriculum, which basically at the end of the day means that we're really looking at how do we train our students both in research and clinical practice, and how do we help them understand how to apply research findings to clinical practice as well. So in many ways, the curriculum is quite balanced, although you'll begin to see some differences from the PsyD, which is a bit more clinically oriented. Students who are good fits for our program, or applicants that are a good fit for our program, typically have an interest and experience in both research and clinical training to some degree. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat around what counts as clinical experience, and it really varies, and it really depends on the experiences and the settings in which you're in. And obviously with a bachelor's degree, you're quite limited in what you can do, right? In terms of clinical experience. But I wouldn't discount the clinically oriented experiences that one can get in a research project, for example. So there are a lot of different ways to define what that clinical experience looks like. Also, as a program and as an institution, we really value and adhere to shaping our curriculum and our engagement with each other through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And so we really do value applicants who are committed to this approach as well. And honestly, students with a very wide range of clinical interests are a good match for our program, given that we have quite a breadth of opportunities to expand their interest through our coursework, through our research program, as well as through their clinical training in the community. So if you're wondering sort of what it might look like in terms of the research and clinical practice, the faculty within the PhD program, similar to the PsyD, are engaged in research and scholarship across multiple areas of psychology. All of the core faculty in the PhD program have labs, which our students will join. And it is through that lab that students receive mentorship and guidance on their research training from the faculty member. And as part of their research training, students do conduct research both as a dissertation, as Dr. Hill mentioned, and are also engaged in presentations and publications. One of the differences I think I wanted to highlight here is that students in the PhD program are required as part of their program and training milestones to engage and in publications and presentations and to disseminate that work. The type of work that students end up preparing to meet that requirement varies depending on who their faculty advisor is in the lab that they're working in. So currently, as the criteria are set and we're trying to operationalize this a little bit better for students, it could range from presenting a poster at a conference, serving as an author or a co-author on a published manuscript, to also being sort of more technical documents that they might prepare for books or manuals that they might contribute to. So there's quite a wide range because we recognize that a lot of our students are serious and interested in pursuing academic and research careers, but a lot of our students are also more clinically oriented in what they have as their career goals. And so we really want to support that pathway. In terms of clinical training, the clinical training really begins in the classroom in year 1 and 2, and I'll show the coursework in a bit. Also, we have, as Dr. Hill mentioned, our training clinics within PAU, the clinics at PAU, and then go on to external practica. Professional advising is provided by supervisors as well as faculty, as many of our faculty are engaged in clinical work. And students really gain quite a breadth of clinical experiences through competitive practica, internship, and eventually postdoc after they graduate. The curriculum within the PhD program is structured to be a 5-year curriculum. And as you can see here, it really starts off in year 1 and 2 with pretty heavy emphasis on coursework. And slowly, as the students move through the program, they begin to engage starting in year 2 with more research focused work, clinical training at our training clinics. They go on to engage in clinical practice at external practica, which they do 3rd and 4th year and sometimes 5th year. But our program really is set up to be a 5-year program, and this is what the curriculum is. And I wanted to highlight that because many of our students do require 6 years, often because they're wanting to seek additional experiences or they're wanting to accrue additional or more hours to be competitive for internship. Some students experience challenges with dissertation, which is how research goes. Sometimes you have a great plan, a really strong methodology, but perhaps recruitment might be a challenge and you're not able to recruit for your dissertation study and you need a little bit more time. But this is generally the curriculum that we apply to students in terms of completing the coursework as well as the clinical and research training. You'll see that this looks very similar to the curriculum that Dr. Hill presented. And you'll notice in year 1, it's quite heavy on the coursework. I should highlight, it looks like a lot of courses, but some of the course topics that you're seeing here are actually half a quarter. So for example, our adult developmental aging and theory course is taught for the first, for 1/2 of the quarter, and then the second half of the quarter, it's child and adolescent theory. So it's not that you're taking, both of these courses for the 11-week quarter. Instead, you're taking half of the quarter with one, half of the quarter with the other, which is why it looks so much. But you can see that there's some foundational and theory-based courses similar to the PsyD program that are happening early on in your trajectory as a PhD student. There were some questions in the chat around summer sessions. So there is a summer quarter. The PhD program does have one required class for first-year students following the completion of their first year. So the summer between first and second year, Students in the PhD program are taking a psychometrics course. Also during that quarter, students are beginning their clinical training at our clinics, our community clinics, as part of the PAU training clinic. And then some students are beginning to take year 2 courses. We do offer a year 2 course in the summer, which is optional for our students. If you don't take that in the summer, it's offered in the fall of year 2. The courses that are in blue, they're really in blue because they fluctuate. They're offered all year for second-year students, but you may or may not take them in the winter. You might take them in the summer, in the spring, and so forth. So I wanted to highlight that there's some flexibility because some of those courses are offered at different times during the year and multiple times during the year. I also put in blue the elective courses, which I'm going to show you. We have quite a breadth of elective offerings, and so it really varies. And this is one of the differences, I believe, from the PsyD program, in the sense that students really can pick from a larger selection of elective courses, which courses they might want to take to fulfill their elective course requirement. And then Dr. Hill mentioned the internship prep course that they offer. We similarly offer one. We call it Professional Standards 3. And it's a very intensive preparation for applying for internship. We actually offer it more than just 1 quarter. And it's really there meant to, very similarly structured, to really support and help our students be as best prepared for the internship application process. During year 4, most of our students have completed all of their required and elective coursework, and they're really mostly focused on dissertation, as well as we have a course called Practicum Forum that all of our students that are completing practicum must enroll in as a way to support their clinical practice outside of the university. These are just some of the elective courses that students have to choose from. These are all listed on the PAU website if you wanted to look at them. There are approximately 40 courses, elective courses, and I should highlight that not all of the elective courses are offered every year, but those are the courses that we have available. Typically, they're the same courses are offered most years. Every so often, we add in a new one, but you can see from this list here that there's quite a variety of courses to fit and match the interests of the students. Some of these courses are dictated or within the structure of our areas of emphasis, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's quite a number of courses for students to enroll in as electives. We also have approximately 25 research labs by our PhD that are led by our PhD faculty. Every year we have a number of external labs. So these are faculty members at other institutions, usually Stanford, Palo Alto VA, University of California, San Francisco, who offer lab and training opportunities in research for our students. Those are not always offered, but when they are offered, our students are able to apply to and be accepted and work with that lab and that affiliated faculty as their dissertation chair. And so there were a lot of questions as well, I think, in the chat around applying to labs. As Dr. Hill mentioned, at PAU, you're welcome to start working in a lab from day 1, if that's an interest of yours. Within the PhD program, towards the end of the first year, students apply to labs and formally begin to work in labs during their second year. Some students begin working in labs in the summer before their second year. Some students start officially in the fall, which is when all students are required to. And some students choose to volunteer in labs, which is a really great way to get to know the faculty and the current work that they're engaging in. And also if you get along and you really actually like each other, which is a really nice opportunity. So one of the differences between our 2 programs is that the PhD program has what we call the areas of emphasis or specialized training. These are areas in which students who have interest in these particular areas can choose to tailor their coursework, their clinical training, and their research training within these particular areas. An area of emphasis is not required. You can be a generalist, as our program and most students are generalists, but if you're interested, for example, in forensic psychology, you can apply to be in that particular area. Where this becomes a little bit different, or where, what is the difference between generalists versus choosing an area of emphasis, is that all of your elective courses will likely be taken within these areas in order to fulfill the criteria for these areas of emphasis. If you're someone that's like, I don't really know which one I want to be in, I'm not really sure, or I'd like to take courses in all of these areas, that's completely okay. And many of our students do that. It does give you the flexibility to take courses across the different areas of emphasis rather than being required to take them within an area of emphasis. The limitation with that is that some of our area of emphasis, such as in particular neuropsychology and forensic, their courses may have prerequisites that if you're not in the area of emphasis, you may not be able to take them. And that's partially because they build on the skill sets and the knowledge that you're gaining that are specific to that area within psychology. As Dr. Hill mentioned, we have a lot of overlap when it comes to our practicum training. I just want to, this is a very similar slide to the one she presented. I just want to highlight one difference here. So our students in our program, supplemental practicum is not offered for first-year students. Students in their second year of the PhD program can apply to receive approval to engage in supplemental practicum. And then students in their third and fourth year or above are able to apply to supplemental practicum as long as the site has been approved to fulfill the requirements that are really guided by the Board of Psychology in the state of California. Everything else about the sequence of clinical practicum is pretty consistent with what Dr. Hill mentioned for the PsyD program. Similarly, we have the same similar captive sites. She provided a really lovely slide that listed some of the popular sites, or some of the more common ones. I've included some of them here. Because we have the neuropsych and the forensic area of emphasis, our students in the PhD program, and I'm sure some of the students in the PsyD program, I would imagine, also train at facilities that are specific to those areas. So for example, many of our forensic students actually complete their practicum at the San Quentin State Prison, for example, given their training. Another opportunity in terms of one of our captive sites that's available to some PhD students is being able to begin their clinical training at Kaiser Permanente and Milpitas. And obviously the Palo Alto VA, as Dr. Hill mentioned, is a captive site for all PAU doctoral students. So this is for the PhD program, the internship match for the last 5 years. It looks a little bit different from Dr. Hill's slide. But what I wanted to highlight here is you can see in the first row for the past 5 years, the number of students in the PhD program who are applying for internship. Below in the second row is the total number of PAU PhD students who have matched. So our numbers differ a bit. One of the differences, obviously, the PhD program is larger than the PsyD program. So each year, the raw count of number of students who are applying is much larger than the PhD program. I'm sorry, than the PsyD program. However, our rates, or the match rate for the PhD program, is quite excellent. It's similar or above to the national rate of students who are applying to and matching at APA accredited internship sites. In terms of how long does it take our students to complete the program, all of the data here is within the timeframes that APA requires us to report that data. So in the PhD program, I mentioned earlier that it's structured as a 5-year program. During the last 9 years or so, students took around almost 6 years to complete the program. And as I mentioned earlier, part of that had to do with needing to gain a bit more experience. Perhaps it might have been dissertation, perhaps it might have been had to do with clinical practice. And then also I wanted to highlight, captured in that time period, is the impact of the pandemic, which impacted many of us in terms of clinical training and opportunities that were available or that we were able to offer. In terms of our attrition rate, it's around 1.5. And again, this is what, to include students who, were enrolled in the program during 2023 and 2025. As I mentioned, the PhD program, and I think broadly, PAU in general, is really committed to diversity and inclusion. The PhD program actually has, and I don't actually know, Dr. Hill, if PsyD students participate in this. I think they do. I think it's university-wide. I don't think it's specific. But we have a number of student groups that are led and by our students based on their interests, both personal and professional, so that they can come together and engage in professional activities as well as be a support network for the students. I think these are university-wide. In addition to that, PAU is a Hispanic serving institution. And so again, it just kind of shows our commitment to diversity within our university, but also externally. This is just a slide of some of our faculty on the right and some of our students on the left, and some of the activities that our different faculty and students are engaged in. So I'll just highlight a couple things here. You can see publications here of a student who served as the author, along with some of the other students and faculty, students presenting their work at national conferences and winning awards. One of the PhD faculty is currently developing an app, Parente AI, that focuses on supporting parents of children who have behavioral, challenges and so forth. So the diversity of topics and areas within the field of psychology are widespread, and our students and faculty are involved in those areas collaboratively. This is again licensing way down into the future. But our rate for passing the EPPP, which is the licensing exam, is similar to the national rate. And this is data that we've obtained from the ASPPB website. So the numbers might be different, if graduates of our program have reported them, but this is data that we have currently. In terms of admissions, the PhD program does have prerequisites, and they're listed here. We do have a strong preference for students who have some form of research experience as well as clinical experiences. We don't require the GRE similar to the PsyD program. And we do encourage, just as Dr. Hill mentioned, that if you are interested or wondering whether you're interested in the PsyD versus PhD, that you just check the box and explore both programs so that you can be considered. And one of the differences here is that our due date for the deadline for the application is later than the PsyD program. So the applications are being received now. Our deadline ends in January. We will likely begin to review applications in December, and especially with our sister program, really thinking about, sometimes we have students who apply to the PsyD program who might be a better fit for the PhD program, and we're in open communication about how can we support applicants the best that we can, so that they can learn about and enroll in the programs that fit what their interests are based on what the materials that they're sharing with us in their application. There was a question, I believe, in the chat around should we or should we not mention faculty that we're interested in working with, given that labs, for example, are not selected until the second year. And I absolutely encourage you to talk about what your interests are and if there are faculty that you're interested in working with. And I think that applies for both programs, because it helps us understand how we can best serve you should you end up being admitted to the program and coming to PAU. And with that, I will leave this here, and I hope we have time to open it up for some questions.
So I've been trying to answer, but I know I missed some for sure. So we've got 6 minutes left. Could try to do a couple. Christina?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, you guys mentioned checking the boxes for both Psych PhD and PsyD programs, but I think I also saw in the chat that it would be ideal to be tweaked if we are applying to both programs. So I was wondering if we have separate statements for each of the program, like how would we apply? Like, do we have to submit the application separately instead of checking both boxes? I just wanted to get some information on that.
Leonard, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Like, I can't find you.
Yeah,
Do you want
absolutely.
to take that one?
So to answer your question, if you are interested in being considered for both programs, you would check that box that says, I would like to be considered for the PhD program. And there is a separate prompt for the PhD program for the statement of purpose. So once you check that box off, we will reach out to you to get any additional documents that we might need. There are some supplemental questions that are a little different for the PhD program, so we may have you fill out just an electronic form answering those supplemental questions, and then also give you the opportunity to submit your PhD specific statement of purpose, and then we can upload it to your file for you.
So when writing the statement, it's going to be submitted for both programs, and PhD, I can submit extra documents, but PsyD, like statement as it is that, did I correctly understand?
Yeah, so with your actual application, when you're filling it out, you will submit your PsyD specific statement of
Oh,
purpose.
okay.
Then, when you check that box off, we'll be
Uh-huh.
monitoring who has checked that box.
Uh-huh.
And then we'll send you a separate correspondence requesting your PhD specific.
Oh, okay. And then there I can submit the statement for PhD specifically.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you so much. That
That's,
really helped.
and
Yeah,
that's
of
the
course.
workaround, so you don't get charged for it twice.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yes, I appreciate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Linnea?
Hey, it's Linnea. Thank you both so much for your presentations. They were both really informative, and I appreciate your time. I was curious, and I apologize if I just missed this part. I noticed some references to like working with the communities around us, but I was wondering if there are specific local groups that you guys partner with for volunteering or getting clinical hours as like we're progressing through the programs. And I'm specifically more interested in the PsyD relationships, I guess the program like relationships that they might have.
With like clinical settings?
Yeah, either clinical sites or I don't know if you guys ever work with like local nonprofits or anything along those lines.
Um, not a ton in that. I mean, it's just really focused on the clinical training. So we
Okay.
have a lot of partnerships with community-based training sites and organizations.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Oshiki?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was incredibly helpful. I had two quick questions. One was, could you speak about, I think someone put it in the chat too, about whether you have an application fee waiver specifically for the PhD clinical program, as well as if you could talk a little bit more about the funding structure, stipend, scholarship stuff for the clinical program.
Mhm. So there is a fee waiver, and I think if you write the admissions office, they can help you with that that process. And the tuition and fees, the fee structure are on the PAU website. But basically, what your the tuition is essentially 4 full years of tuition spread out over the course of 5 years. And so the first 3 years of the program are the most expensive. And then years 4 and 5, the fourth year is like 75% of a year's tuition, and the fifth year is 25% of a tuition. And in terms of scholarship and funding, there are many students who choose to get involved and do TAing for courses, and other types of work study, helping run the clinics, the PAU clinics, those types of things, so those types of funding opportunities. There are some scholarship dollars. They're far, far, far from a full ride, unfortunately. But they do help you eat better in graduate school is is the way I think about it. But a lot of students find other positions, in the PsyD program, people find paid clinical research positions, those types of things to supplement that aren't funneled through the consortium, but find other ways to offset the cost of the program. Eric?
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I have just two questions that I just need some clarity on. When PhD clinical psychologist students at your program, when they get matched What I don't understand is it something along the lines of we have a preference for where we want to train, or do we just fill out some form and kind of list our 1 through top 5 preferences, and then somebody chooses us?
Are you talking about lab match?
No, I'm talking about your when you finish the academic part and then you go into a residency.
Oh, So that's the same exact process for all clinical counseling doctoral programs across the US. So it's a national process overseen by APIC as an organization, and you will have to apply, interview, and then there's an actual computer match, like med school, and you find out in February where you're spending the next year.
Okay, so somebody's choosing for me. Okay.
Yeah, you have a lot of say, and there's over 800 internship sites, and you have a lot of say in where you apply geographically, site type, that type of thing. But you ultimately, it's a computer algorithm
Oh,
that works really
okay.
well. It actually won a Nobel Prize. It works really well.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'd like to just have one more follow-up question.
Sure.
Okay. We're living in a shifting world where technology is developing. The AI infrastructure is affecting a lot of businesses and industries. I'm been trying to track the influence on mental health. And so the reason why I'm interested in research is because I think there's some strong influences of our digital world, how we use computers, how we interact with technologies affecting how we, feel, think, who we are as people. In preparing for a university such as yours, like I'm over here at De Anza College, and I already have a bachelor's degree, but I am trying to go back to school to pivot. I'm not entirely sure, like preparing for a PhD. I've taken some research methodology, but I don't really know what else to do. And then your instructors that talked, you mentioned about getting clinical experience, and I was just scratching my head. I'm not sure really how to do that. Usually there's churches and maybe you personally go get counseling, but I really didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. No, and I think there was such a plethora of questions about what constitutes research or clinical experience, that I think that's a great question to address for everybody. And I think clinical experience, it's you being the one providing the clinical care, not the one receiving the clinical care. And a really common thing that you'll see is some type of crisis line where you get some decent training in how to navigate those phone calls. For folks who are interested in working with young kids, some ABA treatment, working with folks on the spectrum, getting involved. I think what's the perfect setting is getting involved in some type of clinical research project, because you're getting exposure to both research and scientific grounding and clinical exposure. So you might be interviewing prospective research participant one after the next, and diagnosing them, that type of thing. And so and most people don't turn away free smart labor. So they're out there. It's hitting the just cold calling, emailing people who are doing research, or looking that up, of things that interest you.
Okay, that certainly gave me some clarity. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So it's 1:04. I'm happy to stay on a little longer if people still have questions. If questions are really, really individualized, I would suggest that we punt those to email. But if there's questions that you think are probably relevant to the rest of the, to several people here, then let's go ahead and address those.
Yeah, same with me. And I just wanted to highlight that we have 2 PhD students as part of this event, Maya and Naomi, and they've both put their information in the chat. So if you wanted to look at the chat, you can ask them questions as well.
Awesome. Emerson.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate it. 2 quick questions. One is, if we have a professor or a mentor that we're already interested in working under for PhD program, is it okay to reach out to them and just express our interest and let them know that, hey, I'll be applying this cycle? Is that okay to do?
Definitely. They may not respond, but they may actually respond back to you. And I've met with different applicants, or at least had a brief Zoom or chatted with them over email about their interests. So definitely it's totally okay.
Thank you. And then are we going to get a copy of the Zoom recording?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Catherine?
Thank you so much for having this info session. It was very informative. I just had some questions regarding like how central the multicultural awareness and reflective practice are to the training model. Beyond coursework, how do students like actually cultivate that confidence in like a day-to-day training? Are there like structured opportunities or group consultation to explore like cultural counter-transference or identity dynamics as a part of case formulation?
Yeah, I can speak for the PhD program. So yes, to the first part, that it is part of the coursework. And in fact, most of our curriculum integrates or considers cultural considerations across the board of the breadth of the topic of the class. So it's constantly being brought up as a consideration, whether it's within a research context or whether it's within the context of working with clients very early on, even in classes that are more theoretical. There are, within our labs, for example, in the PhD program, many of our faculty are from diverse backgrounds, and the research that they focus on also is inclusive and focuses on the impact of diversity and culture across different communities and or across different settings that are also quite diverse and or that might actually be reflective of those communities which are diverse. And then I would say that there are opportunities throughout the institution to engage in those kinds of conversations, as well as activities, like more formal activities that might be available, whether they're training outside of the curriculum of the PhD program, or if they're community-based, community building activities outside of the curriculum. And then there's probably other ways in which it's folded into the university. But those are sort of the more structured ways. And I don't know, Kimberly, if the PsyD program does it differently, if there's additional things that I'm forgetting.
Very similar to what you just described. We also have a DEI student advisory board, and one of their really cool initiatives is a course consultation where before each quarter they meet with each professor and go over their syllabus and talk about what the experience was like, because there's a lot of feedback, a lot of nuance to feedback that's lost in those written course evaluations. You just can't capture it. And so we've been doing that for several years, and it's a really cool and certainly on Practica, there's lots of that focus on didactics and group supervision and that type of thing. Yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, thank you so much. I just have one more thing, and I apologize if you went over it, but are there opportunities for PsyD students to contribute to faculty-led research projects as well, or is that more PhD?
Oh, absolutely. You're very welcome too. Again, like people rarely turn away smart labor.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you too.
So at the top of my screen, I have someone with iPhone. Do you have a question? The name is just labels iPhone.
Sorry, I was struggling. I'm not too good with technology.
It's okay.
I was trying to figure out the whole call, how to change it. It's Victoria. And then I was trying to figure out how to unmute it. So I just I typed it in the chat, but then no one responded. So I have a master's in clinical psychology, but it's for transfer. So it doesn't qualify for licensure. It's for like continuation for a doctoral degree. So how many years approximately would the program be if I transferred with that MS?
So I believe this applies to both programs. So Ellen, correct me if I'm
Sure.
wrong, but in the PsyD program, it doesn't actually shave off any time
Oh,
because it's a pretty conservative transfer credit policy where it has to be the exact units, it has to be a certain grade, it has to be enough overlap of doctoral level content. And then, so just the way the courses, the number of courses that actually end up transferring, you're still a full-time student each quarter. And so it doesn't shorten your time. The advantage that comes from it is that you are taking fewer classes, and that opens yourself up for taking advantages for all the extracurricular bells and whistles of supplemental practica or research or teaching, you know, all the other things you want to do. So, which is where most of the learning in graduate school is happening. You know, as you're looking at your various doctoral programs, it's easy to kind of zone in on curriculum because it's something that's, you know, you can
yeah.
really look at, but it's really most of the growth in the fun of graduate school is happening outside of the classroom. So that's where I would focus my energies.
So it doesn't shave off the time for PhD? No. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Sorry. I know, that's a bummer.
Well,
It does help you down the road if you have practicum hours. It makes you more competitive for internships.
Yeah.
So it's not a loss.
okay. It's just it is 2.5 years I dedicated
Yeah.
to a program, so it is something to consider.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so painful. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's really painful. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amanda?
Hi, good morning, or afternoon, depending on where you're. I was wondering, I know the supplementals are quite a unique like characteristic of your program. And as much as I want to jump the gun, I'm curious, like given the course load and how you supervise students, like how many of those students actually end up being able to do the supplementals? You said like usually people do like 4 or 5. And like are there ways to help manage that in terms of balancing with coursework?
Yeah, I would say I'll go give Dr. Hill a break talking. I would say that a majority of our students do supplemental practica. It's not a requirement, but they do it because they want to get additional experience in different areas, or they want to build their experience to be more competitive. The supplemental practica in the PhD, and I'm not sure if it's different in the PsyD, it usually has fewer requirements in the sense that the structure of the training is the same, right? They still have to abide by the requirements of the BAPIC system in terms of how many hours of supervision they provide and the infrastructure for supervision and the work that they're doing. But sometimes it might be, instead of the 20-hour requirement, it's only 5-hour requirement. So it's not as full as of a commitment as a regular required practica. And then sometimes there's a lot more flexibility around supplemental practicum because it's these variable hours and variable tasks that you're engaging in. So, you know, I've known students who are working on, let's say, a research study at UCSF, and the assessments happen on the weekends because they're working with children. So it's manageable for them because they do 1 5-hour day over the weekend twice a month, and that's their supplemental practicum. You know, so but there's a lot more variability in the supplemental, and so a lot of our students end up doing usually 1 plus the regular practicum a year, but over the course of their years they might engage in more than 1 supplemental practicum. And I don't know if it's different for the PsyD, but that's typically how it is for the PhD.
I would say it's close enough.
Yeah.
To the PsyD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That actually sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
Isha?
Hi, thank you so much for all of this information. So I had a question around the recommendations. If you're applying to both the PhD and the PsyD, are the recommenders required to submit just one letter for both of those programs, or is it like 1+1, so like 6 letters in all across like the 3 recommenders?
No, they will count across both programs, the 3.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, would it be helpful for them to mention the name of both the programs or keep it like general, just like doctoral program at PAU or something like that in the letters? Like how should they address which program they're sort of recommending you for?
I think it could be either way. And that's because sometimes students apply because the PsyD, the deadline's before the PhD, right? So some
Yeah.
students apply and we recognize that students are considering both programs. And that, it might not be specific to the PhD, the letter that, addressed to the PhD program. I think it's fine. It's not a problem on our end. So one, if the PhD program ends up getting a letter that's addressed to the PsyD, there's no points against you in that regard.
And on that note, I just noticed in the last couple years, because and I'm not sure if this is the way the portal is presenting itself this year, but because there were spaces for up to 5 recommendation letters, I think people's anxiety was grabbing a hold of them and like, okay, well, I better find 5.
Yeah.
That actually is it's just pick your 3 best letters. Do it for yourself, do it for your letter writers, do it for us who are reviewing 1,000 applications. Just pick your 3 best and, save yourself a lot of headache.
All right, great. So in that case, it wouldn't be because it's like you mentioned, there's a lot of overlap, but it's slightly different in terms of like a little bit more clinical orientation, a little bit more research orientation. So even if you have recommenders who are your research supervisors, it won't hurt your like PsyD application, right?
No, because our students are more similar than they're different. And I think even though we're a very clinically applied PsyD program with a heavy science underpinning, it's also challenging to get into our program if you don't have any research experience because, and again, it's not that we need you to hit the ground running, but we do want you to know you do have to do it a dissertation. And so we do want you to know that you're not going to throw up every time, want to throw up every time you have to start down to write your dissertation. So, we do look for some research background. So the things that we're looking for in your recommendation letters are identical. So it's not,
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Marina?
Not unmute myself. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm really interested in the PhD program, specifically with the forensic track. My question is, could we potentially present another site for the clinical practicum experience, if that's an option? Like, for example, right now my full-time job is I'm a domestic violence advocate and counselor. And I would like to see if there's a possibility of maybe continuing my job, hopefully, and being supervised by our executive director who has a PhD in clinical psychology. So I just want to know like the options or flexibility with the practicum.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the formal practicum, no, they have to be BAPIC approved. However, in the PhD program for supplemental practicum, students can present an option, but it has to be, no matter what, approved by the program, and the site that you might be presenting, like where you're working now, would have to abide by the same guidelines as the BAPIC approved, which are guided by the Board of Psychology, in order for that work to count as part of your hours. So we do occasionally have students say, similar to what you're saying, I'm working here, or I know somebody, they're not a supplemental practicum yet. There's there's an application process and a contract that we have to ensure. And that's really for the protection of our students while they're enrolled, so that, they're covered, under the school insurance and whatnot, but then also to ensure that they're actually getting hours that they can count and that abide by the Board of Psychology. It's really just mainly to protect the students. The other thing I will say, some of our students continue to work. It's really challenging. I can understand not wanting to leave the
Yeah.
experiences that you're having. It can be really challenging, but some students are able to manage it well without their schoolwork and their training suffering. But it's very demanding and can be really hard. And then the last thing I will say is that you might actually find a BAPIC approved practicum site that is allowing you to do similar work to what you're doing now. And that's quite possible.
Do you know if the SF court, like if they offer anything like that? I'm really like looking at the CARE Act. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I really want to work within the court system a bit more.
Yeah.
Is there a comprehensive list I can look at for like the approved lists of those sites?
Do you know, Dr. Hill? I mean, the BAPIC site is, I think it's closed, right? Or I'm not really sure.
The current list for this coming year is not available yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not available yet.
Okay, no worries. I did want to also one more question, if that's okay. Do you, to support working individuals, does PAU offer like night classes or courses?
There are some courses that might be offered in the evening, but I feel like most of them are starting around 5 or something like that. I don't think that there are night courses, but that might change annually with the course scheduling, the availability of faculty and other resources needed to teach those courses. But for the most part, most courses are during the day, like 8 to 5.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Zahir, did you have a question? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. And if you're speaking, we can't hear you, although we see that you've unmuted yourself. So. Okay. We're going to move on just for the sake of time, but we'll come back to you. Jay?
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question.
Yeah.
I was wondering for the PsyD program specifically, what the model of the dissertation looks like, if it's more traditional empirical, if it's applied clinical project, and whether qualitative methodologies are something that's appropriate in the PsyD.
The goal of the dissertation for the PsyD consortium is for students to really get that grounding in scientific thinking and process, such that they're able to really be able to tear apart research articles and participate in research if they want in their career. And so there's actually quite a range of what we allow, because that goal that I just described can be met in a number of ways. And so we have a number of students who do qualitative analyses. I'd say a lot of our students there's a lot of large archival data sets that are floating around in the psychiatry department, big clinical trials. And so a lot of our students are doing their own original questions to existing data sets, which also helps shave off time because you're not dealing with IRB and data collection and all of that. So, but we also have a growing number of students who are really interested in treatment development. And so designing their own treatments that are, based on evidence, and designing pilot groups and things like that.
Yeah. And I would say it's the same for the PhD program.
Okay, amazing. Thank you guys so much. I had one last question, and it was if we should mention our research methods of interest in our statement of purpose.
I would say definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay, so here's mic is working now.
Yeah, sorry about that earlier. So I see that the application cycle is now open for review. Is there any benefit of getting the application in earlier, since it looks like it's being reviewed as they come in, or is it pretty much the same?
The only advantage, every application gets analyzed holistically, truly. And the only advantage of getting it in earlier is that you might hear from us sooner. You might. Is what happens is the interview days, we also, it's not a linear process where it's like, oh, okay, yes, no, this is definitely interview candidate. We might want to group maybe some child folks together on a certain day. There's a lot of integral moving parts. And so you might hear from us sooner. The sooner you get it in, you might hear us, but it's not going to hurt you if you apply at 11:59 on December 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good to
Same
know.
for the PhD program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just
Bahar?
one thing to
Please.
throw out there real quick, is a lot of students get confused by the deadline. So the deadline is actually set in Eastern Standard Time. So if you're waiting to submit that application to the very last minute, just make sure that you're being mindful of that midnight being in Eastern Time. Because we have gotten some students who just kind of were unaware that that deadline was in Eastern Time. So unfortunately, the application does close at Eastern Time. So
yeah, it's 11:59 Eastern.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bahar?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Thanks for the presentation. I would like to ask, I just put it in the chat box, but I'm going to ask it again. Actually, I wanted to ask about the English language proficiency test because I'm applying as an international student. So I just wanted to know about it, if I can request for a waiver of an international student, because I did my bachelor in English and I studied in India for 6 years and the medium of instruction was in English. So I just wanted to know if I can request a waiver as an international student.
That's not something that we look at in the PsyD program. So you don't need to take the test for the PsyD program.
And I actually don't know for the PhD now that I'm thinking about it. I don't think so, but
Yeah, usually the indicator is whether or not your degree, your bachelor's degree,
yeah.
was taught in English. So yeah, so that would just kind of be the differentiator. If it wasn't, then other considerations will be taken in. But yeah, that's the only kind of indicator of a student needing to possibly take the TOEFL.
Thanks, Leonard.
Okay, thank you.
Jean?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So usually how many applicants each year? So I saw like Dr. here mentioned there is already over 1,000 applicants this year. So does it mean this year is much more competitive than the previous year? Yeah, just want to get some data. Thank you so much.
So that's just in progress. So not all of those people will actually end up completing their full application. The PsyD program hover around 750 application for our 30 spots.
Okay, got you. Thank you so much.
Chanel?
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. So I think my question goes back to what you were touching on, Dr. Hill, about the clinics in the second year of the foundational practicum. And I was just wondering, since the consortium is 30 students in the PsyD program, the percentage breakdown of students in each clinic. I was just curious to learn a little bit more about that.
So there's actually an additional clinic that the PsyD students train in at the Palo Alto VA in that second year. So it's those three, the three PAU community clinics, and then there's a general outpatient clinic at the VA. And so about 12 students elect to go to the VA.
Okay.
About 3 or 4 elect to go to La Clinica, and 3 or 4 to SGIC, and the remaining go the general.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was also just wondering, I think it was Aline who was presenting and mentioned this, but the professor who's working on developing an AI app right now, especially with helping parents, I was curious to know which faculty member that was.
Oh yeah, that's Eduardo Bunke. I'll put his name in the chat.
Okay, thank you. And just as a quick follow-up of that question, but how do you find out? Is it just usually through organic conversations with professors about the current research that they're working on that's not as related to things that they're publishing?
Yeah, so at least in the PhD program, that gets updated every year just to account for changes. Some faculty have specific lab websites. That's usually a good indicator of what they're working on and what they are where they're publishing. And then reaching out to them, because sometimes there are projects in the works, but they haven't made it to actually being conducted and or published. So you can always reach out to them and hopefully they'll be responsive to your email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I will say, sorry, during the end of the first year in the PhD program, we host several information sessions for our second year students to attend so that they can learn what the faculty are currently going to be working on, and especially in the coming year. And also, what is it like to work in their lab? So there's lots of opportunities to get to know the work of the faculty, especially once you're a student in the program.
Okay, that's helpful. And is there a consolidated, I guess, list of faculty members and their sites, or we kind of just have to look through with the ones we're interested in?
Yeah, if you go to the PAU website, this is the public part, and you look at the research labs, or if you just search research labs, it will pull up all of the PhD faculty labs on one page, and you can click through either their websites, or many of them have created PDFs for the application process, but they're all on one page on the PAU website.
Okay, thank you so much.
Joyce? Yeah, sure, thank you. We can't hear you, Joyce. You're unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Oh, can you?
Oh, there you go. I think.
Okay. Good. So thank you so much for the presentation. So earlier you mentioned that there's a strong preference on people with clinical experience or research experience, which I totally understand. But my problem is I have that lined up, but it won't happen until early, like January next year. And you also at some point mentioned that you may actually suggest people to wait it out for another year before applying. Now, is it possible for me to try applying this time around? And if I don't get in, I will reapply again next year, or will I be penalized by doing this repeatedly?
I mean, I can, well, for the site, I'll speak for the PsyD program only. So absolutely, commitment, dedication, reapplying is certainly not going to hurt you. That just means you know what you want and you're going for it. So it definitely won't hurt. It just is painful in time and money. That's all. But I'll let Dr. Barrera speak for the PhD program.
Yeah, I would say the same. There's a lot of other factors that go into it, but that's our strong preference, really as a preparation or a foundation to spring from as a doctoral student. But we've definitely had some students who have never been involved in research before, and they do fine. So it's a combination of factors for sure. And I recognize too that it's hard to get a clinical role when you have a bachelor's degree only, and those opportunities are much farther and fewer between. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we got through all the raised hands.
We did. Well, it's been really awesome getting to spend a little bit of our Friday with you all, and genuinely look forward to reading about reading all your applications. And I think what really feeds my soul in terms of doing this role is knowing that our field is in good hands and on the shoulders of you all. And so really, truly looking forward to seeing your apps.
Yes, most definitely. And do reach out to us if you have questions. And our admission team is fantastic at also answering, especially questions around the application process and some of those more technical application questions.
Great.
Great.
And
Thank
have a
you,
great
everyone.
weekend.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
I think she may have logged up. Someone asked something in the chat.
Mm.
Chanel. No.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you. Such a good event.
Great. Thanks, Leonard.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Kimberly. Bye.